Tonight on The Breakdown, New Zealand silenced some critics with their opening World Cup win. It's business as usual for the Rugby World Cup with all eyes on the referees. And the Mitre 10 Cup embraces some milestones. All that and much more tonight on The Breakdown.
Hello and welcome to The Breakdown. Yes, what a weekend it was across the globe, of course here in New Zealand and in Japan. And there were two teams I'm certain were celebrating in their changing rooms. One was in Japan, of course, that's the All Blacks, and that couldn't get any further south. Rugby Park. The drought is over in Invercargill. Southland with a win over Counties after losing 26 straight. The All Blacks won their, 29th straight pool game at a Rugby World Cup. We're going to look at all of that. Mitre 10 Cup, Rugby World Cup. Here's my team. Batesy, Crocky, Cully and Ali. That's it. We're all here, boys. How great, Ali, to get it started. Finally, All Blacks impressive, but it's been an interesting few days at Rugby World Cup. Very interesting. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of activity around everything from referees to predictions to the crowd and the intensity. I mean, it's a fantastic start, wasn't it, really? I mean, more than we probably expected. Cully, nice to finally sort of get going. A sense of relief, too, that the All Blacks have finally got that first match out of the way. Yeah, I guess that was the one we've all been waiting for since that draw came out, was that game. But, I mean, probably what's impressed me more was just the crowds and the stadiums in Japan. Like, I've been up there, but I haven't experienced that. So just the stadiums and the people and the public just getting them behind it, I think it's been great. Crocky, you're still going about the business of Mitre 10 Cup. You're still in one piece. You're hanging in there? Hanging in there, mate. Yeah, no, enjoying it, having a good time with the Tasman boys, and another big game this week against Auckland, so it's going good. And Batesy, you've been really busy. Of course, you've been down with the under-19s. You got pipped at the post by Canterbury coaching Auckland, but in terms of seeing the next tier, we're talking about Mitre 10 Cup, we're talking about the All Blacks. You had a look at the next tier of talent floating around New Zealand. What did you think? Yeah, well, on a personal thing, I thought our boys did pretty well. You know, we lost in the final, but it was a good tournament, I think. But like always, you know, there's some wonderful talent and. Crocky, I know it's not quite where you are, but jeepers, the Canterbury boys got a few good front rowers coming through, that's for sure. Yeah, they've bred a few down there. They're finally trying to get rid of you. There's a finally second opportunity. There might be a chance to play. You talk about the next tier of talent. We've got a tier of talent up in Japan. Kirsty Stanway is standing by. She's managed to track down two of her own. Kirsty, any trouble finding these two beside you?
Well, the only trouble finding these two is that we have found a shopping village. So JK, he's in his element. He's already found something that he's wanted to purchase in Amiyoko.
Hey, Gori-san, yoroshiku onegaishimasu. Yeah, like, this is shopping centre of the world, Ueno. Really good for the locals, shoe shops. And I found a hat shop, so I'm going to be rolling something new out pretty shortly.
You're always any velvet by chance?
Well, there's a little bit of velvet. A little bit of velvet.
Has to be, as always. What did you think of the opening weekend of competition, though? We'll start off with you first, Mills.
Oh, I found it really interesting. You know, it's interesting to come in. Teams are really sort of nervous. You know, a lot of them, you know, all but probably Australia had a little bit of a scare, but they got through sort of, I suppose the favourites got through in the end, JK. Yeah,
and I think Japan were the same. It was probably a bit of a scrappy performance, and Jamie won't be happy with that. But, I mean, like you guys have mentioned, the crowds, the people, I mean, this is huge. So they would have been carrying a little bit of nerves, but they're all gone now. First round's out of the way, and we're into it. It's fantastic. Well, besides maybe the last little bit, but, you know, good start. Great start to the tournament. What
about the All Blacks? Are they happy with their performance, and how much better can they get after South Africa?
Well, you know, the All Blacks will never be completely happy, but if you are Steve Hansen, it was the perfect start, you know. Hitting hard, physically, stood up, probably dominated the South Africa, put them under so much pressure. Faf de Klerk probably had his worst game for a long, long time. Yeah. So he'll be happy emotionally, get up the next day. For me, Mills, the interesting thing is about what they do selection-wise going forward, probably. Yeah, selection-wise, and also the combination of Barrett and also Mo'unga. They're starting to come into play now. All of a sudden, the balance is a little bit better. You know, Mo'unga's sort of stuck in the ruck, and then Bowden's sort of stepping up. Bowden had a fantastic game, so getting that balance now for them has been fantastic. Interesting what sort of like lays ahead in terms of selection, particularly in the midfield for me.
JK, Millsy, Kirsty, good to see you guys are flat out, like literally flat out. You know, I can see the sweat on your brow, you're that busy. JK, you're a very emotional man, my good sir. France, Argentina. What about that game, mate? That was fantastic, wasn't it? Nail biter.
Well, unbelievable. First time that France have actually beaten Argentina in pools. But the interesting thing is now Argentina are under so much pressure. I mean, they've basically got to beat England to get through, Mills, and you know that, like, it's okay losing, but in that particular pool, it's tough.
The French, though, they've just come in under the radar. All of a sudden, they've picked off the Argentinians, so they've started, well early. But Argentina, from a cycle point of view, they've got to get up because their England game now is massive for them.
What about Ireland and Scotland? We talked about the Six Nations sides coming into this. Ireland, good enough?
Well, I've got Kerwin and Fergus in my ancestry, but I got rid of the Fergus pretty quick. They were horrible. Really, really horrible. Started 10 minutes good, and then they just got dominated by a really, really, really good Irish forward pack. I was a bit worried that Ireland possibly could have been 1 year too old, but they were really good on the weekend. And if you're going to lose, Mills, better lose early, I guess.
Yeah, but the thing is, for Scotland, now that game's looming, that last game against the host, Japan, who have been fantastic, that first game against Russia, that now becomes a big one. So that's going to be huge for the fans.
And because remember, that pool crosses over with New Zealand, South Africa. So depending on who tops the pool and who comes second is who will end up playing in the quarterfinals.
Yeah, and look, I think Japan are going to get better and Scotland are going to be under all sorts of pressure. And how good would it be for the tournament if they actually do go through,
Guys, Batesy here. Millsy, I'll send this one your way, mate. You talk about the Six Nations. We must talk about England. What do you think about the English start against the Tongans?
I'll just have to translate that for Millsy because he doesn't have the earpiece in, but Batesy just asked you about, Six Nations. We talked about a lot, but England, interesting performance.
I was, and particularly Mani Tuilangi. I mean, what a performance. He's been out with injuries and hadn't been selected and things like that, but they're bringing a totally different game now. They're mixing it up, their physicality and set piece, along with a bit of flair, which we haven't probably seen in the past from the English side. So Northern Hemisphere teams totally changing their game, which is fantastic to see.
Yeah, and I think from me, Batesy, what Eddie Jones will be annoyed about is they probably, took the foot off the accelerator, started really well. They look good at times, but then I think they thought, well, the game's over and, let's just get through it.
They looking the best out of those Six Nations sides, England, at the moment?
Ireland, yeah, it's too early. I think they're all, for me, the big question, and you guys can talk about it later, is the six are starting to identify themselves, but who are the other two in the quarters? That's what I'm sort of excited about. Let's hope it's Japan.
Kirsty, I want to ask you, and I want comments from obviously everyone on the team, this reaction, Michael Cheika and Fiji and that contest and how things have started to get a little bit ugly. Is there a bit of talk over there about, I suppose, the response to that game and all of the chatter afterwards?
It is very messy what's going on there. Michael Cheika not happy with the Fijian coach, John McKee. Just for some context around the Reece Hodge incident. Cheika didn't think he was going to get cited. He didn't get cited during the match, but afterwards, Fiji, of course, they wanted him to go to the judiciary. What do you think about how it's all played out?
I think as rugby players, we feel that you shouldn't do that, but the law says you've got 24 hours to lodge a protest. I've been in that situation as a coach, and it really is a dilemma. So, I don't think I think Cheika would do the same if he was playing the All Blacks. I don't know why he's complaining, but I think for you guys back there, Ali, and we spoke about on the breakdown, already the refs have changed their decision a couple of times, or we're not seeing the consistency. I mean, what that the other day compared to what happened in Perth to Scott Barrett, are you going, well, let's show some consistency, Mills?
And that's probably what Cheika's worried about, because he goes to judicial and he doesn't know what he's going to get. He could basically be out of the tournament. That's probably what's annoying Cheika the most.
Yeah. Not just that incident, though. The shot on Richie Mo'unga as well has been spoken about.
Yeah, and that's not the refs in the heat of the moment. We don't want to throw the refs under the bus, and we've been saying for a long time on breakdown, it's the leadership. There are guys outside the game that can do it with a little less pressure physically and game pressure. That's what they're there for. The TMOs and the side guys, the guy in the stand should be talking. Slow the game down, stop it. If it's such a big moment, stop it. And that's why the top refs do that. They actually slow down, they take their time. But I just think it needs to be a bit more of a collective effort. Once again, no consistency. We don't know what's going to happen. So if you're a player, man, that's scary.
Yeah.
And we do not want a refereeing decision to determine if you stay in the World Cup or if you go. Thank you, gentlemen, so much, but we're going to go back to you guys in studio.
Yeah, thanks very much, team. I love your passion, JK. As always, thanks, Mills. Thanks, Kirsty. I'm sure you're busy. Somewhere else to go. Look, it's time for us now to look in depth into this game. Look at the performance of the All Blacks. That's where we're going to start. Crocky, I'll ask you, when you looked at that and the way that you knew, South Africa told us how they were going to play. What sort of performance, how do you think the All Blacks themselves inside that camp are looking and reviewing that game?
Oh, I think they'll be incredibly proud and happy with the start. Just watching the game, it looked incredibly fast. Like, I was getting pretty tired watching it. I don't know about you, lads, but it was intense.
We're going to be more tired than you are. Goose, you're still playing. The rest of us.
No, it just looked like it was a great game of footy. Lots of rugby, and you know, I think to get off to a start like that, first game of the World Cup, a lot of nerves going into it, but it didn't really show. Like they looked pretty polished.
Yeah, every time we play South Africa, we talk about this rush defence and how they cram us. But I mean, Cully, you know better. To me, we showed another element to our game, which was that crossfield kick, which was that ability to slow their line speed down by what our backs could create. So the backs almost relieved the pressure for the forwards to get in the game a bit more.
Yeah, I mean, it took a while to get there, though. That's the thing I actually quite enjoyed, is that the All Blacks soaked up all that pressure in that first 20, and all that South Africa could get out of was 3 points, which I thought was really good. And then when the game opened up and it got a bit loose and we got our kicks right, and then our vision, and what was it, in 3 or 7 minutes we scored, you know, a couple of tries.
I was a bit based that what are we doing, to be fair, for the first 15 minutes, because it looked as though we were putting ourselves under pressure. It looked as though we were trying to look for a miracle. How did you see it?
Well, the initial part of the game, I thought that both sides' defence dominated the match. South Africa had the ball, we would whack them and vice versa, and I thought defence really dominated. But the one thing, to your point, that I struggle with a little bit is when we got the ball, we almost felt like we had to score straight away, first phase, second phase, and we threw the ball behind us, and all that did is that let the South African defence keep coming forward and keep knocking us over. But in saying that, and I'll pick up from what you said a little bit, Cully, what you touched on, the good thing about that is that we were able to adjust, because you must admit the first 15, 20 minutes, you're sitting at home watching, you're thinking, this ain't all going to plan at this stage, but we were able to fix what we do, and that was the most pleasing part.
And that, to me, comes down to selection. A lot of that, Ali. We debated long and hard last week, on and off camera, about who was going to play. Once the team came out and we saw the reasoning behind it, most of us were very, very close. The selection for me of Scott Barrett to start after playing very little football, but the impact he had on this game and the impact he's been having throughout the course of this season.
Yeah, I mean, he's such an influential player. The one thing I would say is that first 20 minutes, you've got all the nerves, all that excitement, and I think they managed that quite well. But if we look at Scott Barrett, you look at his work rate. He's always in the game. I mean, he's down here, and then he's over the try. I tell you what, his try ability there was far better than the one on the weekend.
I mean, Crocky, you know him well, though. Here's a guy he's got an engine. We talk about players, you talk about the pressure they're under. Here's a guy, though, that he seems to understand and get himself in the right parts of the game, and has always got the motor to do it.
Yeah, incredibly hard-working professional, really looks after himself, trains hard, always turns up to the start of the season and good. He's just a bigger version of his two brothers, you know, so he's got that pace, he's got that massive engine, but he's also a big human.
What also did show is versatility, isn't there? Because that carry-on with Sam Cane, which we won't get into, you know, he was ordered off the field, and then he showed his versatility because Patrick Tuipulotu came on, so another string to the bow that we have talked about.
And you see his tackles there. I think he was quite big in that first 20 minutes. I mean, he's a big man, but he made those 12 tackles. A lot of those were big tackles. Which I think what you need. I mean, he's got a big motor, obviously, around the field, but defensively, I thought he was really good.
Do we have to give him so much compliments? I mean, can we really touch on that dive? As a second rower, you want to see finesse, glamour, that sort of stuff. And that
you're obviously not talking about yourself.
Yeah, it was horrific.
Well, who are you talking about?
He came in and his knees hit the grass first, and then he flopped over. I mean, sir, you're so good. Can you please?
He's obviously worried about the grass being
Look at him.
dry.
I mean, he's a picturesque human being.
I don't care how he got the ball down. He got the ball down. He got it down safely.
Okay,
you talked about versatility. Then you have to give those compliments to Ardie Savea, because the fact he started at 6, we know the role he's playing at 8 off scrums, and then he goes to open side when he loses Cane. I mean, for me, Batesy, we saw him already show the impact he can have on the game.
Yeah, and for me, I know that Bowden was officially the man of the match. Scott Barrett, real good, top class, but he's the man for me that actually was the best player out there on the field for the All Blacks. I thought the stuff he did around breakdown and just also those, as we know about him, those post-contact meters that he makes, I thought his game was top class. And you talk about the motor on Barrett, we'll talk about the motor on this fella as well. It's right up there, isn't it?
Oh. And there's a bit of a theme, I think, coming here from the All Blacks, Crocky, for me. The fact they're obviously coming in, they're incredibly well conditioned. Yep. They were paced through Super Rugby. There was obviously a lot of frustration, the fact you weren't seeing them every week, rotated through the Rugby Championship, the Bledisloe Cup. So they've come in here, they look fresh. And the way that I look at Ali Savea, it's his decision-making at breakdown time, the fact he gets himself in positions where he's got great patience at looking for a turnover.
Yep. Picks his moments brilliantly and sometimes lets the play unfold, and this time he goes straight in there. But as you see in other occasions, picks his moment, comes in late and and makes the play.
The thing with him too, I mean, we've had Plums on here a few times and he talks about just how fit he is and how he can recover really quickly. Every time I see him, he looks buggered. Like he'll come, but he's obviously thinking really clearly. Like those rucks and that there, he's making great decisions. And you know, if you're tired, you might just flop in. But he's having the patience and he's got a clear mind of when to go and when not to go.
And you back that up with his ability to turn on the pace. I mean, as we all talked about here, when he walks, it looks like he's half dead or he's one leg shorter than the other. I mean, the poor guy is not the most finesse human being in the world. But when he puts it down, he's faster than most of our backs out there. You know, he's clocking 35 kilometres an hour. And that, I think, is the most dangerous part. We all know when a defensive line, you're sitting there going, OK, I've got him at this pace, and then whammo, he puts another 5 on you, you're like...
That's a
Crocky's like, see you later, mate.
Where'd you get that from?
That's what I saw it on the Sky Sports coverage of Bledisloe Cup game.
Beautiful.
We talk about performances. A number of questions, though, Crocky. There were some challenges from South Africa around some of their technique at scrum time. Joe Moody, a number of scrums went down. Jerome Garces decided to play on a lot of occasions. How did you see the contest up front going?
I thought it was incredibly even. 2 good packs. Most of those scrums were a bit of a stalemate. I see a lot of pictures on social media of these still images of guys with their elbows on the ground and stuff like that. You know, those sort of things can be taken out of context a little bit. I think you've got to be a little bit careful of using those still images. For me, it was a great contest, very even, and it wasn't, in the end, it wasn't a big factor in the game, I don't think. It was just, you know, wasn't the deciding factor. It was just 2 sides that sort of nullified each other in that area, I think.
There were strengths of the games, though, of the South African side, the Springboks going in. Batesy would expect them to be able to use a traditional strength in their line-out drive, but it appeared the All Blacks were able to negate that as well. All the things that South Africa have used against us, could they use them? Were they able to use them in this game? Well,
they did in patches. Their line-out drive will stick with that because that's what you've talked about. They didn't get any line-out drive momentum, and the ability of the All Blacks to slip in between the jumper and the lifter and sack that guy right from the start, and then fan out. The South Africans had, 5, 6 in that maul. The All Blacks just all fanned out. And as I said, their ability, the defence really took over in the first part, and that was one of the reasons why. Men on feet pushing forward.
Yeah, agree. And I think JK touched on it. Faf de Klerk played one of his probably not most memorable games.
Least effective games against the All Blacks.
He struggled to move his pack around, and he struggled to dictate, potentially because they weren't getting the go forward that they needed to. But I think he's such an influential part on their team, and especially their forwards, in creating and sustaining the momentum that we saw there. And we've got to give credit to our defence because they shut him down. They gave him less options.
Do you think on that, and you talk, because early on they had things going their way, but the All Blacks had that purple patch, Cully, of 5 minutes, 6 minutes, whatever, scored a couple of tries. Do you think that really affected Faf de Klerk in that? Because from then, he almost seemed to get rattled and then go off the ball a lot.
Generally, I think it does. I think it deflates. I reckon it deflates teams. So they were dominant for whatever that first 15, 20 minutes, and they get 3 points. I think we hit the post on one of them, could have been 6. And then in a purple patch, you're right, at 7 minutes, we get those 2 tries. And I reckon that deflates teams.
Absolutely, because they put all that energy into their attack. Cully, I want to ask you a potential superstar in this World Cup, though. Cheslin Colby, outstanding. You think about the opportunities he got for South Africa. There were few and far between off broken play, and not for a couple of great pieces of defence. He could have broken us.
Yeah, well, he's dangerous, but he's out wide, so they need to get him the ball. And I think that's probably the one thing they struggled when they were chasing the game in that back end of in the second half. But he's just rapid, he's quick. And for Mo'unga, I mean, to get him at the back, I know, well, both of us know how hard it is as a fullback when you've got a winger with that much pace and taking the outside break to turn and chase and get him. I mean, that was a superb piece of defence, but he is certainly dangerous. He's one to watch.
Yeah, and they'll be disappointed, though. Once again, they probably didn't create as much as I expected them to create, Crocky, or the fact that giving themselves a very few opportunity to I suppose, put us under real pressure. Yeah,
like you say, it probably comes back to the kicking game of the All Blacks, not giving guys like Colby that many opportunities to get that, I suppose, that unstructured attack, which is where they look the most dangerous. And then we talked about the maul, defensive maul, the ability for the All Blacks to sack that, stop that dead, and then get a full line in was crucial there. You talked about unstructured attack there. That's what you mentioned. Well, you talk about the All Blacks. That suits Boanga. That's the new phrase that's coming out of the All Blacks. And, Steph, it appears as though the players themselves are starting to enjoy it as well.
Yes, Steve Hanson's dual playmaker system is beginning to look like a force to be reckoned with. Boanga, as they're called, have yet to reach their peak, according to Barrett. Now, Barrett went on to say that Wellington this year was the first time we've actually played together, so it's only going to get better from here. I love playing with Rich. He's a super talent, and hopefully for this team, we can figure out how we get the best out of each other and do what's best for this team. Now, Barrett then spoke about his rise to responsibility within the All Blacks, saying, from my point of view, it doesn't change whether I'm playing first five or not. As an influencer of the game, I want to be as demanding as I can. Now, obviously, these two can't play every game together, so when do you think is the next time we're going to see them? Yeah, I think it's a great question, Steph, because we play Canada, Namibia, Italy before the anticipated quarter-final. For Batesy, for you look at that combination. When do you expect to see them again? Probably Italy a given. Yeah. Will we see them again before that?
I think you'll see them one more time before Italy, and then they'll give someone else a crack, whether they put Ben Smith in there. I'm not sure exactly what they do, but I think there's 3 games to go before the quarter-final, and I will imagine they'll play. For me, I think they'll play 2 of those. Yeah, I mean, Bender can be there. I mean, Geordie's obviously over there, so possibility. TJ's there, possibility at first 5. Just got to make up a name of who first 5 and fullback. If there's TJ and Bender, what are we going to name them? I thought we'd talk about that artist. Remember Bo Ringer back in the day?
Well, let's talk about Richie Mo'unga. The difference for me, Ali, the fact that he doesn't just do it on the attack side of the ball. You mentioned it before, Kelly. Defensively as well. Here's a guy who puts bodies in harm's way. This is the first 5. You know, let's give credit where credit's due. These 2 guys, with their speed and athleticism, they give us so much versatility at the back.
It's the fact you don't have to reshuffle a defensive line when you've got a 10 that can make tackles like that. I mean, that's Kurtley Beale at full tilt, and you know, he's nailing him. And then look at this one. I mean, that's a superstar tackle, that is. I mean, and the thing is, when you've got reliability at that first pivotal defender connecting with your 7, it's magical, really.
No surprise to you, this though, Crocky, his ability defensively.
No, and we were talking about it before. He's a incredibly hard worker in the gym. He's very strong. Worked a lot with Owen Franks to get his strength up, and you've seen that his kicking game come a long way from that strength at his lower body, but then making tackles like that. Ironically, a lot of his game-saving tackles were when he was slotting him back at fullback, so him and Mo'unga are obviously changing those roles. Yeah, and I love the fact that the way they are complementing each other, and then first and second receiver when they get together, so very, very dangerous. Well, of course, all eyes over the weekend were on Japan. So many great games. And Steph, let's start with an overall. Let's start Pool A.
Yeah, so Pool A, if we have a look, nearly everyone has played, so let's have a look at where they're sitting. So Ireland and Japan on top. Now, after getting off to a good start, Joe Schmidt seemed happy with how Ireland went, but Townsend not so much.
That front foot we got off to, you know, it just takes a bit of pressure off in the game. It means they have to chase it a little bit. They have to take a few more risks than we do. And at the same time, I was happy with the number of risks we did take. Conditions made it really difficult for us to construct things, but we got the only try in the second half when a lot of those replacements were on.
Yeah, well, disappointing as initial thought. We didn't start with the energy, accuracy and aggression that is required to beat a team like Ireland. Ireland started very well, and they took their chances when they got into our 22. Probably of any team in world rugby, if you give them a 15 to 20 point start, it's going to be very difficult to come back.
So, guys, with Scotland losing and Japan looking quite good, that race for the number 2 spot could get interesting.
Well, all important too, the fact that we know that all in likelihood now is going to be against the All Blacks in the quarterfinal. You're smiling about something,
Well, did you hear that interview? He said, Gregor Townsend said, we didn't start with passion, we didn't start with defence, we didn't start with attack. I wonder if he even started with players. That's the only thing he didn't name in that first 20 minutes is we didn't start with... Scotland, mate, you're struggling.
But if you're Japan, Kelly, you're looking at this as a huge opportunity. They probably knew going into this Rugby World Cup that this was the game, and it's going to happen a little bit later on in pool play. But now they've got to look at that and say, you know what? We are probably going to go into that game as favourite.
Yeah, well, I was just going to ask that question. I don't know where they're ranked on the world standings, but, I mean, what's an upset? Is an upset Japan beating Scotland? Would an upset be Scotland beating Japan? I'm not too sure. I would have thought the other way around. Japan beating Scotland would be... yeah,
that'd be the upset.
Would be the upset.
So, but that's fully on the cards now if Scotland don't get their act
together. That's the last game, right?
Yeah.
The last game so to decide that second place.
Japan has had a massive build-up. Like, they've been in camp pretty much solid for the last 2 or 3 months. Training often from 6, 7 a.m. in the morning till 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night. Like,
they
they've
love
been
it though, right?
training so hard.
Yeah, they do. I know they've had a massive build-up, but I'll just change tack a little bit. We're also forgetting number 3 there, Samoa. You know what I mean? Yeah, maybe they haven't been that flash, but Tonga weren't that flash before the tournament either. They pushed England, and Fiji, 60 minutes into the game, they're beating Australia. So they're probably, I know they're not watching this, but if they were, they're thinking, don't forget about us, men.
Yeah, I like to say that, wouldn't you think about it if you're the host nation, what a dream quarter-final that would be. The All Blacks taking on Japan. All right, Steph, take us through Pool B.
Right, so looking at Pool B, some good convincing wins from New Zealand and Italy, but South Africa will be looking to bounce back in their next match. And moving on to Pool C, England obviously victorious over Tonga, but some say not as convincing as it should have been. Here's what the coaches had to say.
You know, they're a good team. They squeezed us for territory in the first half, and we just couldn't get into their 30 to throw any punches. We are getting better. There's a massive improvement tonight, but like you said, there's some opportunities there that we're just not taking advantage of.
Yeah, we came here to get 5 points. We got 5 points. We've got no injuries. We know we can play better. Yeah, sometimes rugby's like that. The ball just doesn't stick. We left a number of points out there. But I'm so pleased with the attitude of the players. You know, that's 2 tests in a row we haven't conceded a try. And it shows a bit about the attitude of the team, so really pleased.
All right, and finally on to Pool D. Wales and Australia on top, but we're not counting Fiji out just yet. Now, Jeff, you were telling us earlier you seem to have figured out a recipe for success for the Rugby World Cup.
Yep, just after one weekend, lads, I'm going to show you what it's going to take. Pure and simple. It's time now for the chalkboard, and this is what it comes down for me. I'm going to show you first and foremost. Here they are. First, you've got to kick your goals. That's how it's going to work, because you've got to take your points. It took a great kick from Beauden Barrett to ice this one for the All Blacks. You don't want to miss them straight out in front like Dan Biggar did for Wales. The discipline game. Don't give away penalties. We didn't give away penalties on the weekend. You don't give away territory, which means you don't fall foul of a line-out drive, my exciting part of the game. Receive and contest kicks. Pure and simply, we saw it, the ball is going to go in the air, there was some rain floating around, you have to be able to not only chase them, but first and foremost, you then have to, when you receive, take care of possession. You make errors behind your team, you'll get punished. And then your ability to counter-attack off the mistakes that teams make, to be able to break out, and we saw it in the weekend. France were able to do it, the All Blacks were able to do it. The good teams in the close games, if you've got speed, skill, athleticism, you can move it. And the other one is, in the end, you need to have a strong and accurate defence, and that comes without saying, but if you can combine a good defence and discipline, you're going to put teams in the wrong parts of the field. Gentlemen, you can go at me as much as you like here, but looking at the games, looking at the way the top teams play, I think there's some teams that don't have that counter-attacking ability to hurt some other teams like the All Blacks do.
I just look at Ali, you're rolling your eyes there a little bit.
Oh, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to write down.
Yeah, I know.
I'm stupid,
but I'm just saying.
Well, seriously, Goldie.
Well, you know, so I didn't mention scrums or lineouts. I didn't mention scrums or lineouts, so I knew I had 3 forwards on the panel because I don't think that's what's going to take the World Cup.
And how much sense is this panel making tonight with 3 forwards? It's the first time it's evenly ratioed.
Convince me this Rugby World Cup will be run by scrums.
I'll pick up on a point. Okay, you talk about the defensive game. Okay, so as we've already talked about, first 20 minutes, All Blacks South Africa was dominated by defence. South Africa dominated probably the good part of that. They got 3 points. Then all of a sudden, let's go to number 4. What gave the All Blacks that little purple patch? couple of counter-attacks, they score, and then as you talked about, Kelly, that sort of deflated the Springboks a little bit until half-time. So I'll give you 4 and 5. I'll leave the rest to you guys.
But it's not going to be won by scrums. That's why they left one of our best scrummagers at home. And they took ball players as props.
Yep.
So, I mean, I totally agree.
What are you agreeing for? Kick him.
Yeah, well done.
Don't agree with him.
Well, he's dead right.
I mean, for you, when you look at the game and the way they've selected that team,
Yep.
that's what they've prepared for?
Absolutely, and we know that these parts of the game, number 4, counter-attack, like every defence in this, you know, in the top 5 or 6 teams is right on. So how do you create an opportunity? Well, when they're unstructured, get that defence out of structure, and then you've got an opportunity, and that's exactly where those top teams are making the plays.
You're the only one that didn't agree with me.
I would add 3 more.
Well, that's a whole game. I didn't want to put the whole game
I'd
up
add
there.
3 more. One would be the coin toss, crucial to go the right direction. Secondly, would be a hell of a lot of luck, because who knows where this thing's going to go. And thirdly, let's just pray that the referees make this a decent game.
We're going to talk to them about after the break. I'd say this too, you've got to stay healthy. Pretty important you stay healthy. Well, of course, the All Blacks, they've been in Japan. It's not always just about the rugby. Some of the downtime, they get to enjoy the culture as well. Check them out.
We've just been told there it's a lot like a marae back at home, so for us to be able to, I guess, come to a place that has that sort of spiritual connection and that connection with their people in Japan, it's quite humbling to be a part of that. I've always felt that I had a spiritual connection. Religion hasn't been a big part of my upbringing and my life, but there's always been a side of me that's had, I guess, a spiritual sense there as well. So the more that I've been tapping into Te Reo Māori, the more important that's becoming for me.
Yeah, it's crazy. You never get this in New Zealand. You only get iPhones in your face and whatnot, but these massive cameras is just embrace it, eh? You know, getting out of the hotel and just getting to learn more about Japanese culture, and for me, it's like there is similarity between Māori and Japanese, so it's pretty cool.
Hello and welcome back to The Breakdown. Well, after the first weekend of the Rugby World Cup, there's been plenty to say from both the media, the players, and as always, social media has been busy, and Steph, everyone's had something to say.
Yes, and Michael Cheika is in the news yet again after he criticised Fiji for their referral of Reece Hodges' tackle on Petheli Yato during Saturday's match, which left Yato concussed.
Yeah, that would have been a little disappointing to me from a spirit of rugby point of view. You know, that you'd talk to... I prefer they come up to me and get upset with me if they were really upset about it, not to then talk to me in that nice sort of friendly chitty chat way and then go behind your back and put in a referral. I don't think I've ever referred anyone. But I'm confident that, especially after listening to the boss of the judiciaries, I think that we'll get a very fair hearing. We'll hopefully get it as quickly as possible so we can get our preparations right for this week.
So understandably, there is huge backlash from the rugby world about Cheika's comment, with some saying unless he thinks it's an illegal tackle himself, he should have nothing to be worried about. And others saying it would have made for a very interesting game had Hodge been red-carded at the time. So guys, do coaches normally speak with the opposing coach if they're going to go to the citing officer, or has he just lost the plot?
Yeah. No, go on, Batesy.
I don't have an issue with it whatsoever, because the thing about them is they might not have seen the video at the time. So you go back at the end of the game, so you go to the aftermatch or whatever, you go, you shake hands, you have a chat, blah, blah, blah. Then you go back to your hotel room, you check out the footage, and then you're like, holy moly, that's not ideal. So I have no issues with it.
I'm a bit over this from Michael Cheika. I'm frustrated with the fact he's always complaining about something. It's never his fault. How about he takes responsibility for his own team's performance? He was very, very good in Perth a number of weeks ago, Ali, but since then, there's been nothing for me to convince me that, one, they can win a Rugby World Cup, or two, he can lead them there, because at the moment, I think he's looking for excuses already.
Yeah, he does seem to be getting off topic, if that makes sense, not focusing on the small things and the processes for them to take care of his results. So, look, I'm a bit like you, a bit concerned, but I've got no issue with what they're doing. I mean, the reality is they've had a look at it over time, they're going to make a proper call, and we go from there. Checkers just, mate...
Shoulder charge is a shoulder charge, right? Crocky, when you see that, and the contact from Reece Hodge, and you talk about the number of things, I mean, there has been some talk, though, already. We're just in the first week of this competition about not so much the standard of refereeing, but some of the actions of the referees. Are you concerned right now, this early on in the tournament?
Oh, I think there's just so much pressure on referees. You know, we've seen in the last couple of World Cups referees that have made mistakes, and it's, you know, it's pretty much ended their careers, or, you know, had a massive impact on their careers. So there's a lot at stake for these guys. So I think you're probably seeing a couple of pretty nervous referees that don't want to make the big call, and you know, who they select for the final games will be important, because the top 3 or 4 referees, I think, will be able to make those right calls in the right moments.
Yeah, I mean, referees, do you make the call or don't make the call? I think it's a double-edged sword. Sometimes they don't want to jump to a conclusion, and then that's probably what we're seeing with the All Blacks game, and he went to the guy in the box and slowed it down, and it was almost like he didn't want to make a call. And I think that's probably, you know, what we're talking about here is referees are always on a big stage. They don't want to make a big mistake and then find out later that, ooh, maybe it was wrong.
Do we think maybe what's happened with the whole Scott Barrett thing, the fact that not 15 on 15 is a conversation they might have had, because we didn't see any urgency from anyone to go deep into their pockets and pull out cards. The fact, you know what, do they want to let this thing play out and maybe play out through the judicial process?
Yeah, and I suppose with all players and referees and everyone, it's the most scrutinised. As we keep getting this game developed, it gets more and more scrutinised, and everything's broken down because it's so tight. So for me, you know, I think the referees have got a very hard job, and as I said, they're over scrutinised for anything they do. But for me, it's consistency and open communication. Like, I don't think anyone has a massive, apart from Michael Cheika maybe, massive problem with people making mistakes. But let's be honest and let's front foot it so we're all clear about what we're talking about. Because at the moment it's a little bit smoke and mirrors.
I'll tell you what, Kieran Reid wasn't overly happy with the fact that it wasn't a yellow card from Jerome Garcia's in that game.
Yeah. Oh, look, I agree with everything you guys are saying around the pressure on the referees. Look, let's talk just the money element alone. Imagine the pressure mounting on them. But if I look back to 2011, and one of the key mind shifts we made was we've got to do everything to alleviate the ref. And what I mean by doing that is play outside of putting him to make a decision. Make sure what we're doing removes him from having to make a decision. Let the other team force that hand on him. And I think that's what we'll see with the All Blacks, as they'll get less and less affected by the referee's call and more focused on, let's not try and play that game where we depend on the ref to make a critical call, because at the end of the day, they won't make that call. Yeah. They're all, as Graham Henry uses those great words, they're themselves. And so they'll be like, no, we don't need the ref involved, and this way for it.
Only thing I would say to that, I think the threshold for those red cards and yellow cards has definitely come down. Like, they've been, over the last few years, they've been way more prepared to use that. But under the pressure of World Cup rugby, will they do it? They did in 2011 in the Welsh game. Yeah. Albin went, didn't he? Yeah.
But what I would expect, just like teams, I think they will get better through the course of the tournament.
No way.
Yes, they will.
No way.
I have faith. I have faith. Just like Steve Hansen.
It's like Michael Cheika's press conferences will get better. There's no way.
Well, Eddie Jones will get more entertaining. There's no doubt about that. Well, of course, we've heard from Kirsty, Sir John Kerwin, Mills, Muliaina. Let's get another perspective coming out of Japan. And Gregor Paul, the reporter from the New Zealand Herald, is standing by. And Gregor, how's the international media responded to the performance from the All Blacks against South Africa?
Well, I think it's been hugely positive. I think you need to put a wee bit of context around it, because coming into the game, I think the British media in particular were buying into this narrative that the All Blacks were vulnerable, that they were there for the taking. And look, you know, talking privately to a few guys that I know, a few journalists from the UK, while it might not have necessarily been in their copy, I think privately they were largely expecting South Africa to win that game, and quite a few of them have gone on to actually back South Africa to win the World Cup. So what I think we saw post-match was a fairly quick reversal from a lot of the British media, who decided, actually, we've got this wrong. The All Blacks look fairly capable, and once again, they are the team to beat.
Yeah, look, they're back to #1 in the world. We've just had a bit of a chat around the officiating at the Rugby World Cup. What's the word on the ground there, particularly across the media, about the performances of the referees on week 1?
Look, I actually think the officiating has been more of a social media story than it has been a mainstream story here on the ground in Japan. I think a lot of the journalists are actually aware that there were 1 or 2 refereeing incidents in the opening weekend that were worthy of further examination, but there's no point, and I think most guys here are fairly seasoned, experienced journalists. There's not a lot of point in trying to engage coaches right now and trying to entice them into talking about referees and get controversial headlines going, because they're just not going to do it. But we have seen on social media a number of issues that are getting brought up about the quality of the refereeing. But look, as journalists, I don't really know if we want to be getting too far into following what's happening on social media, which is why it hasn't really been a major story on the ground here quite yet.
Oh, that is great to hear. The focus may be on the rugby. Then Gregor, if you're talking about what's happening at Rugby World Cup time, it seems as though the All Blacks are on a bit of a charm offensive right now. When will things get really serious again, both on and off the field?
Look, I'm not sure the World Cup ever stops being serious, and it certainly won't be that way for the All Blacks, who I don't think are going to dip out of the highly intense mode that they're in. They're going to keep that very much at the forefront. Going down to Kyushu, they've got an awful lot of work to get through. They've got 3 games still to come. They've got to play Namibia and Canada, work through a number of combinations that they want to see settle, get a whole heap of players onto the park. And then they've got to play Italy, who, while they've beaten them fairly comfortably in recent times, I mean, they are a Six Nations team. That's the game before the quarter-final where I suspect they'll probably want to put their top team on the park, really run through what they're all about, get into that quarter-final mode, get into that intense feeling. So I'm not sure that just because the guys were bowing to the crowd and we've seen everyone else follow them, that's taken any of the intensity or seriousness out of the World Cup. I think guys are just trying, or teams are just trying to win over a little bit of local support, which may be quite crucial come quarter-final time, to have a lot of people in the stadium that are cheering for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Gregor, thanks very much for giving us your time tonight. Appreciate it.
Cheers, guys.
Well, plenty more to talk about after the break. Plenty of Mitre 10 Cup action as well. Stay with us.
Coming up, we dissect all the best action from round 7 of the Mitre 10 Cup. Plus, we catch up with Waikato legend and NPC Centurion Dwayne Swenney. Don't go anywhere.
Welcome back to The Breakdown. Time to talk about the Mitre 10 Cup, the National Provincial Championship. Our 2 divisions are going head-to-head. There's been so many great games, and a couple of teams in particular are starting to make their move, and one of those made theirs in Auckland, and it was Wellington, Ali. And are the defending champions, are they under some sort of pressure now, and are Wellington starting to look very, very good?
Look, this is not a marathon, is it? It's quite a short sprint, this tournament. So, you know, losing 2 or 3 on the trot, it puts you in a bad position. And I just think they're probably making potentially too many mistakes. They're not grinding out those momentum shifts when things aren't going for you. They're not just sort of holding in there, taking it in and then playing. You know,
this is not what we saw last year. This is a team basically last year I thought played with real confidence. They don't seem to have that same confidence. Their defence certainly isn't strong. But I look on the other side of it. It looks as though to me that Wellington are starting to build some momentum. Yeah, they are. They've got a very young forward pack, Wellington. And, you know, I think Wellington were excited to play, and what they did, they had a lot of enthusiasm about the game. And it's Auckland were a little bit off the pace, but one thing I do know about Auckland is they won't give up, and they've got a pretty important game this weekend against the Mako, which will be real interesting. And that to there is, as we know, I don't need to add you in this conversation, but the Mako are the benchmark at the moment, aren't they? They're unbeaten, they're killing the competition, and if Auckland want to be serious, well, here you go, have a crack. Playoffs are different though, Kelly. Yeah, or just on Wellington, I mean, I know you say it's a sprint, but they didn't start off sprinting. They started off reasonably slow, but won those games. Yeah. They probably shouldn't have. They should have lost to Counties. They should have probably lost to Bar Plenty. They got smashed by the Tasman at the start of the season. But they've come right at probably the right part of the season and shown a bit of form. Playing on top of the ground with the sort of talent they've got out wide is certainly helping. Yeah, they've got an awesome loose forward trio. Dixie Karifi leading by example, their captain. So, yeah, been really impressed. A lot of young guys floating around in the back line. Yeah, so really exciting, but I mean, I know that this is the team to beat. Yep. This fella here is sitting right next to us. We'll talk about Tasman in a moment. Look, I want to talk about the Bucketheads. Buckethead struggled down in Invercargill, Crocky, against Southland, and then they go to Christchurch and play Canterbury, and they play out of their skin. But when you have guys like Oteri Black and Ngani Laumapi and Jamie Booth at halfback, these guys can play, and they're a team that I think are exciting to watch now, but also that are getting some momentum. There's nothing between these two divisions.
No, they're a gritty team, Manawatu. I've never had an easy, like maybe this year we got away from them, but they're an incredibly gritty team, and they've got some quality in their backline now, especially with Laumapi there. He just adds a huge dimension to that team. And the value of having guys like yourself, having played so many games, and Nick Croswell playing his 100th game for Manawatu. You know, he talked about the fact that he wasn't sure you would see many of those in the future. I hope we get to see a lot more.
Yeah, those types of guys add so much more to a team in a different way, you know. They go into the change room after a match and they treasure that 80 minutes, you know. We talked about it before, these influencer guys trying to create content after a match.
You're an influencer, Ali.
I am not. I'm the guy that goes in and tries to get a beer. But it has experience. It's that time when you can sit next to your mate Cully and you say, well, what about that move there? What do we do wrong? What do we do right? How can we improve? And it's that older, wiser head that needs to come down through this grade. And, you know, people like Croswell playing these 100th match, it's just so special for New Zealand rugby and individuals like that, Sweeney and the likes. Pretty big weekend for them.
Look, there's a number of performances from the weekend. I said it right at the top of the show. When you've lost 26 games in a row, Crocky, it cannot be easy to come out and play in front. They should have probably beaten Manawatu. They take on Counties. Now, Counties at the bottom of the premiership, they're under threat. But for Southland, they're probably still celebrating, right?
Yeah, I'm really, really happy for them. They've actually been playing some good rugby this year and been, like you said, been really unlucky a couple of times. I think they're probably sobered up now, and hopefully they're just enjoying the glory of getting that win, and hopefully they can get another one, you know, come back into next season as well with a bit more confidence.
Yeah, I agree with you. They've been playing some pretty good football. They look as though they're well coached. Dave Hewitt's down there, you know, they're preparing well, just not taking their opportunities. Great to see them get a win. Let's talk about his team.
Hewitt gets another week to coach them again? Or
oh, absolutely.
Like he gets another year extension on his contract. Probably a year extension on his contract.
Oh, look, he deserved it after that.
He's such a good man.
You mentioned it, Tasman, Cully, the team to beat. Crocky, you guys are on fire. Waikato felt the punch here. It was a tough one, though. It wasn't easy for them.
Oh, look, the last couple of weeks we've actually been pretty unhappy with how we've been playing, and you know, for most of this game we were behind, and you know, I suppose just a bit of belief, and we managed to keep at it. And
run me through this, mate.
Yeah,
you're scampering there.
I actually thought I was running away from that. Was that a number 12?
Running away. Is it downhill, that part of the ground?
You've got a Barrett dive too. You need to touch the ground before the ball did.
Hence why I wasn't having a crack at Barrett earlier. Because I know
you did a good one later, though, didn't you? You did a good one later.
Outstanding, Crocky. It is great to see you scoring tries out in the open field. Well, we shouldn't forget as well, there are celebrations. We talk about Nick Croswell. For Dwayne Swenney, he's done the same thing. He celebrated his 100th game for Waikato on the weekend.
What an occasion for this man.
Waikato Centurion number 22, Dwayne Swenney, and a mark of respect.
I grew up wanting to be a Mulu man one day, and there was only one team I ever wanted to play for.
Intercepted by Swenney. First touch of the ball, and he scores.
When I made my debut, I was a 17-year-old schoolboy. Got a message in maths, actually, to go to the principal's office, which is never normally a good thing, and she had this big smile on her face and gave me a piece of paper and said, you got to ring this number. Rang the number. It was Ian Foster, Waikato coach at the time. Said, do you know who I am? I was like, yeah. Grew up watching him as a kid, and yeah, he said, oh, can you get the rest of the day off school and the rest of the week, because you're going to debut for Waikato this Friday against Hawke's Bay. And yeah, it was pretty emotional. There's a few tears. You know, at a young age, I was very much a fanboy of a lot of the guys that were involved in that team. I learned so much from the guys that I got to train alongside and pick up, you know, some really good habits along the way. In 2006, when we won the Air New Zealand Cup, it was back then, and you know, that was a pretty special time in my career as I think I was a 21-year-old. And that team, you look at some of the guys that played, I think we fielded a Test rugby starting 15, and it was a pretty special team to be a part of, and I suppose that was a real big highlight early on in my career.
He's one of those guys who sees what's next pretty well. Some really good rugby players don't always see what's next. They operate in the moment. He can see things unfolding and so anticipates really well. And I think, you know, when you get a little bit older, but you can still anticipate well, there's obviously clearly a place in the game for you.
The game of rugby is just beautiful to me. It's so diverse and, you know, all body shapes and sizes can play it. You can constantly learn. It's always evolving. The game's changed so much from when I started to now, and I think that hunger just to learn new things, to try new things. I wish my legs still worked as they did when I'm younger, but I suppose upstairs has got a bit faster and I see things a lot quicker now, and, you know, I really enjoy the tactical side of the game, and I love being able to share experiences with the new young guys coming through and to pass on some of my knowledge also.
Some lovely little offload from the man of the moment.
Twins is thought of as like the ultimate Mulu man, so that's what we all aspire to be, a Mulu man, is putting the team first. It's helped me a lot. When I just come out of school, I just used to try to run over people and stuff like that. Sweeney's is really big on things post-contact and pre-contact, so he does it really well. So I just kind of watch what he does and try to bring that into my game.
100 games, very, very special. So what does it mean to you to wear this jersey 100 times?
Oh, it's a bit emotional there, Coops. I was born and bred here, so it means everything. It isn't common to play 100 games, and I suppose it's very humbling to think of myself as somebody that's going to join a very elite club here in the Waikato. And I've had an awesome support network the whole way, with family, friends and the local community, and yeah, I'm just extremely thankful for that.
I've got no affiliation with Waikato, and it choked me up. You know, I just had to pull that one in. For you played with them. I saw you there lifting up a trophy. I mean, it's so important to the game, like Ali said earlier on.
Yeah, I actually debuted with Sweens. A good story. We've got Dwayne Monkley medal. We know Dwayne was one of the coaches back then, and he saw Sweens playing for Hamilton Boys High. Pulled him out and said we had a few injuries, pulled him out, and that's how he made his debut. So really good. And what I will say about Sweens as well is it hasn't all been smooth sailing for him. He's had plenty of ups and downs, so for him to get to his 100th is a wonderful achievement for him.
Thanks, Batesy. Thanks, Crocky, as always. Cully and Ali, make sure you join us as well. Big in Japan tomorrow night on Wednesday, 8:30. That's Kirsty and JK and Mills and Izzy, he's on tour as well. And don't forget, the next All Black Test, big in Japan, match day. We'll have the build-up and the post-match. That is on the 2nd of October at 10:30. Thanks for watching us. Great to have you with us. We will see you next week. Good boys.